Share Conference presents Rob van Kranenbrug, The Internet of Things.
Welcome, and thank you very much for inviting me. I'm really honored to be here. These are pictures by Isaac Mao. I think they show why we're here. And this one was taken in New York, and I think he deserves a big hand, because I think he's one of the reasons why we're here. On the left. Can we get a hand? So we're winning, but we're only playing half the field. The objective is to open the military and to open the police. And we can open as in sort of leave everything intact. In the 18th, 19th century, there were guys who had, and girls, who had these birds sitting on there. I would like a small open source drone hovering sort of here, so that I can sort of send out. And so we can leave the drones intact. We can leave all the bio bomb detectors in our city intact. We can leave the smart cameras intact. We just take over. So we just take away the dashboards of all the people that are looking now, so that we can look in as well. Because what are they actually protecting? So where do we die? Well, in the past 10 years in the European Union, we had 580,000 people killing themselves. We had 420,000 people dead in traffic. And we had under 500 people blown up. And now this is all very horrible. I'm not saying anything about how bad it is to die in any particular way. But it doesn't make sense to pass all that money to anti-terrorist measures if this is not where we die. There's more people dying falling off the stairs in their homes than actually being blown up in Europe. So where does our money go now? Our taxes. If I had full open data, full disclosure and full traceability, I would sort of have a dashboard of all that data, and I would have like $1,000 or €1,000 in taxes. And I would spend 500 of making everybody feel good, 400 everybody getting into a bike, and maybe I'd put 10 cents of that €1,000 to anti-terrorist measures of sort of not being blown up. I think we can safely do that. Well, we know where it's being spent now. Over, if we have €100, over 50 is going to security. Now, whose security is that? This is state capital sort of security. It's not us. It doesn't threaten us in our daily lives. This is not how we live, how we die, how we worry, how we feel. It's threatening a particular kind of structure. And the funny thing is that we've been paying for that all throughout history, and we keep paying for that now. So we somehow, in some strange sense, we sort of keep paying for our own prisons, and we sort of welcome that too. So let's take a step back. 1451, the Gutenberg press. We know what happened. The kings and the queens and the nobles in the church immediately opened up the printing press, distributed all the tools for learning, and we were all literate in Europe. 3 million of us in Europe in 1451, 60,000 people in London. We were all literate by 1500. Fantastic. Could have happened. Now, there were libraries. No, there were no public libraries in 1400. There were no public libraries in 1500. And there were no public libraries in 1600. Actually, if you say, I want to read a book in my language in 1600, you'd be burned. There were no public libraries in 1700, and there were no public libraries in 1800. The first public library in Holland, where I sort of come from, just one man doing all this, just one man really advocating for this public library, is 1918. The first public library act in England is 1880, but the first real public free lending is 1918. This is way too long. So you cannot sort of stop distributing learning tools for over 450 years. Well, that's what you think, but it happened, so it was possible. Now, to not distribute learning tools when you have a chance to do so is an act of war. It's an act of war on intelligence. Basically, it's an act of war on us. And we now see that this has actually been a declaration of war on sharing, on collaborating, just caring, on being ashamed, actually, some sense of having some shame left. And you who were here who are a bit younger, growing up in the network, sort of growing up in this TCP/IP, WW, the abstract principles of REST and the APIs, you don't. When I sort of talk to, when I sort of teach people who actually have grown up in there, they just cannot believe the clumsiness and the strangeness and the inefficiencies when they close down their computers. So the moment they close down their computers, or go off their tablets or go off their smartphones and have to sort of face the real app, the real sort of world, it's so ridiculous and so basically so clumsy that they just tend to sort of move in through there as if they are in a sort of dream, but they don't really believe that they have some agency there. Now I think this flow of sharing was of course always there, and it can be the Internet of Things. And this is an extreme positive view on it, which I think I can sort of have now. Because I think Internet of Things is actually a kind of radical transparency, where we are going to have to face a kind of transition period. We did this when the Internet came about. So when the Internet came about, nobody knew where the quality was. Then Slashdot made Slashdot Karma. It's evaluated and it's evolved over time. It's a process. Nobody sort of knew how to build reputation systems online, but somehow we managed and people did. So we're going to have to go through the same phase, because Internet of Things actually will put everything in the light. There is very, very, very little that will escape this ecology of RFID, smart code, the barcodes, the QR codes, IP46, active sensors, is basically all around us already. So the question is, can we ride it? Can we take it? Can we overtake it? Can we build a kind of TCP/IP for the real world, which is a very light infrastructure and local decision-making on the ground? Can we get rid of all these states and all these supranational institutions? And can we have just the backbone and then pay as we go? 20% flat tax just on your starting up. That's it, that's all. We pay for a very light infrastructure, mobility, sewage, internet, that's it. The rest is local decision making on the ground. It's basic, Malta Malatesta, autonomy in solidarity, and without really having to go and talk about the word anarchy in one particular sense, because it had such a bad name. It was deliberate, of course, that it has a bad name. The writings of Malatesta and the old anarchists are basically saying this: look, we want this flow. We don't want all these blockades that don't belong intrinsically to this flow because somebody put them there because of ego, status, or money, or all these things. They can pretty much go. I think they can go, and I think we should not be worried about this ecology of barcodes, QR codes, RFID, active sensors, IP46. It's all very cheap hardware. It's not rocket science, it's radio. There's so many people here and outside from a lot of the whole coding community who are very, very knowledgeable, who have expertise about open source software and open source hardware. So I think we can actually build that infrastructure. We have to get a little bit more solid, though. We have to get a little bit more political, because it's not going to happen by itself. The IBM Cisco smart cities that are already also knocking on the doors of the mayors of Central Europe, and basically all the cities that are going to Rio and offering the mayor a dashboard of his city. They will put everything, all the sensors in the city, and the mayor will be sort of looking at it and be getting a full view. They're out there, they're selling, and they will put all the data that we paid for with public money in taxes, that now they will sort of get for free and they will put it in their data formats and systems, mash it up in a way that we can never get the real raw data out of there again, so we'll have to keep paying their systems and their formats for over and over again. This is what we see that has happened with basically computing from the 50s. It's not necessary, but it means that we have to sort of sharpen up. We've got to have a story also for the mayor and also for the people running the cities, that it doesn't have to be a dashboard for the mayor, it can be a dashboard for the community, it can be a neighborhood dashboard. We're generating the data, we should own the data, we should also enrich the data in the neighborhood and then decide to sell to what service we want to sell, or start up a service on our own on this open backbone. So we should not occupy the dead spaces. Of course, I've got great respect for all the people occupying the spaces at this moment, all these dead sort of squares and all the fantastic camps out there of people occupying, but these systems are dying. They're sort of they're dead and gone anyway. We should occupy the new gateways to the new forms of power. Now, Siemens has a hearing aid, which is an ambient hearing aid. Which means that if you walk into a city and if there's a fire and the fire truck is on the other side of town, your hearing aid knows that the fire truck is on the other side of town before you hear it, because the hearing aid is online, just gets all the information. So as you walk into the fire truck making all the noise, your hearing aid starts to dim it sort of already. This hearing aid will get some patch for getting some data of your body and some sweat and some heart rate and some e-health sort of things. So people are now looking, what's the gateway to the body area network? And that can be glasses, smart glasses, hearing aids, t-shirts. We all know about the smart meter in the home, which is the gateway to the local area network, your home. Basically, all the big data aggregator companies have bought small smart metering companies, because once you hold the gateway to the home, it will be like the API to the home. So you will have an interface and saying, okay, now I add this neighbor for 2 weeks, entrance to my home. I will, I'm sort of nearing my living room. I'm still in my car, but I'm gonna put the lights up. The light bulbs will be IP46 lights. Your fridge will have IP46 internet connectivity. Everything with a little bit of software in your home will have internet connectivity, and you want to access that from outside your home in a kind of secure way. So once you're in that gateway, once you have the smart meter, you control everything that's going in and outside of that house. The wide area network is the car. By 2015, we'll have eCall, which means that if a car gets an accident, it has to call sort of the police or it has to notify some instance that it has an accident. It's had an accident. So there's going to be a lot of software in the car already, but also internet. You're in your car, you feel a little bit sick, the car is noticing that you feel a little bit sick, and it wants to let your home know that you're not going to eat that, so you have to sort of report that to the fridge. This fridge will be given to you by your local food store or the big chains of food store, because they will simply give you a fridge, and then you will lease the food, sort of like the storage of food that you will have sort of in your house sort of from them. The very wide area network is a smart city, and every city is trying to get smart. Fortunately, here in Belgrade, we hacked the smart city because the Minishare got the smart city URL, and if you Google smartcity.rs, within a few weeks, you will see our consultants who are 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds, so sort of like kids. And they'll be the consultants for Smart Belgrade, and I think they'll do a great job. Now, this is where we got to be. So the coding power and the hacking power that we all have, and that a lot of friends of us have, should not be directed now against hacking all these dead systems. It should be in building the new gateways for the new systems, because that's where the power is going to be. Because whoever controls that flow, that seamless flow, that's the new power. So forget about your parliaments, forget about politics, forget about the politicians. They've got really, really no say in these matters. What's being built now from the ground up is this new seamless flow, the flow between these gateways. Now, it can be open if we build it, or it can be closed. If it's closed, we will live in 10 years from now in a world with 500 military zone smart cities, and Mad Max in between. So we either start building our technicals, which is something that I think is also nice, sort of like to do, to Fab Lab a technical or two, or we can start getting serious and start trying to use all the power that we have, all the coding power, to get into very mundane things. So we should start making open source washing machines, open source coffee machines, open source toothbrushes. We should try and get the objects, the devices, and it should run not on an iPhone, but on something that we can build ourselves. We've got a Milky Mist platform, we've got a Raspberry, we got 80 tablets that we can sort of put on. So we could actually try and build that device ourselves and then put the security in there that the security people want and know about. Now we're going to run into a lot of things. Up until now it's been, not for some of course, that we've seen, but up for now, for most of us, it's been a free ride. It's been like a holiday. It's a little bit of a holiday. But we're going to run up against really big blockades, because once we get serious, once we start asking data from the police and from the military, once we want to open up their networks because we paid for them, then we will run into some trouble. It will be passports, taxes tied to all these old systems. So we must organize in a very light way. We cannot have structures, we don't want them, and we will not have them. But we can have a kind of platformist ideas. The first thing is you should all do, and I hope you do it now, is to delete your Facebook account. I think you have to do it. Really, I really think you have to do it. I did it 14 months ago. Since then, a whole new world has opened up for me. I'm back to reading books. I've got my life back. Sort of out of the 880 friends I deleted, only one sort of came back to me and said, "Why did you sort of delete me?" I said, "I'm sorry, I just deleted everybody." But no, it got too out of hand, and it's an enormous amount of energy wasted. We should get this energy back into the real world, back into the streets, back into the place where we live, back into the devices that we use. So that's step one. I hope that the Facebook servers will see a massive sort of drop down from Belgrade at this very moment, and then this will spread, and then they will sort of end up. I don't care. So the next thing is we smile, which is the most subversive thing to do now, because we are winning. We have to occupy these sides of optimism. We shouldn't leave these sides of optimism to the just do it and sort of do all these things. That's really, really important. If the old crews are happy, this will be really good. Now the third step is up to you, because you know what to do. But there were some good things. For example, in the 70s, the FBI agent in San Francisco wrote to Hoover that the only thing he could actually see that the Black Panthers were doing was feeding breakfast to the kids. Basically, that was all that they were doing. Then the young lords in New York in the end of the 60s, beginning of the 70s, started also to do these breakfast programs, but they also noticed that there was a lot of sickness in the area, and so they went and did door-to-door TB testing, and at one point they liberated a TB testing truck and took it to the neighborhood and ran 700 people through it. And at one time they held the Lincoln Hospital for 12 hours to test all the sick people in the neighborhood. I think that's a good tip. So we do three things. We delete Facebook, we occupy the gateways where it matters, and we liberate hospitals. Thank you.